Monsignor Cuong M. Pham, a priest of the Diocese of Brooklyn, has devoted his ministry to serving both the universal church and the local church. From 2011 to 2019, he served at the Pontifical Council for Legislative Texts in Rome, assisting the Holy Father in matters of canon law and contributing to major legislative initiatives while promoting the study and faithful application of canon law worldwide. From 2019 to 2021, he served at the Apostolic Nunciature in Washington, D.C., supporting the mission of the Holy See and its relationship with the Church in the United States. And that's the first time that I met you, along with a cohort of students and seminarians and sisters from Holy Apostles. You very graciously welcomed us, and we're thankful for that. In 2016, Pope Francis named him a Chaplain of His Holiness, conferring upon him the title of Monsignor. At the time, he was the youngest recipient of this distinction in the Church. Born in Saigon, Vietnam, Monsignor Pham came to the United States with his family as political refugees. He attended St. John's University in Queens before entering the seminary in Douglaston and later Huntington, New York. He was ordained to the sacred priesthood on June 2, 2001. He currently serves as pastor of Our Lady of Mount Carmel Church in Astoria, New York. He's fluent in English, Italian, Spanish, and Vietnamese with familiarity in Latin, French, and Chinese. Monsignor Pham continues to devote himself to fostering unity among cultures. Will Monsignor Cuong Pham please come forward? Monsignor Pham, you have devoted your life to serving the Church on both the universal and local level. The time you spent assisting the Holy Father in Rome and working with the Apostolic Nunciature in Washington, D.C., has borne much fruit as you minister to people of all cultures in the universal Church. In honor of your accomplishments, by my authority as President Rector of Holy Apostles College Seminary, it is my great pleasure to confer upon you the degree of Doctor of Sacred Theology, honoris causa. I am now pleased to introduce Monsignor Cuong Pham, who will deliver our first commencement address today.
Dear Very Reverend Father Martin Rooney, Provincial Animator and Chancellor, Mr. Robert O'Hara, Chair of the Board of Trustees, Very Reverend Father Peter Causa, President Rector, Reverend Father Zhang Nguyen, Vice Rector and Dean of Men, Reverend Fathers and Deacons, brothers and sisters, seminarians, members of the Board of Directors, esteemed faculty, staff, generous donors and benefactors, graduates, families and friends. Good afternoon. It is a great joy and a distinct honor for me to address the graduating class of 2026 of Holy Apostles College and Seminary, an institution long dedicated to intellectual rigor, deep faith, and the formation of men and women for the service of the church. But before I continue, I'd like to acknowledge in a very special way my mother and my family who are here today. Like many of you, I would not be standing here without their sacrifices, their prayers, and their constant encouragement, sometimes very persistent encouragement. For all of this, I'm deeply grateful. And if I may, I would like to speak to you today not primarily in an academic voice, nor as a canon lawyer, but as a priest, a pastor. And I will do my best not to turn this into a homily. Though I should warn you, old habits die hard. And as I look out at this assembly, I take some comfort in seeing what appears to be a very patient audience. Today is a day of achievement, but even more, it is a day of mission. And if there is one truth I have come to learn in the priesthood, and perhaps one that you are only beginning to discover, it is this: your vocation will not unfold according to your plans. It will unfold according to God's plan and God's providence. And those two are not always the same. You have spent years here in formation, years of discipline, clarity, and structure. There were syllabi, deadlines, and perhaps most comforting of all, grading systems. But parish life, my dear friends, does not come with a syllabus or a grading system. And if it did, I'm not entirely sure I would always pass. The life of the church is lived in the unpredictable, often messy reality of human lives. I remember a moment in my own priesthood when this became very real to me. 5 years ago, I was asked to take on an assignment at what is often called the Mother Church of Queens County in New York City, a parish that is, in many ways, a microcosm of the Universal Church, Our Lady of Mount Carmel Parish in Astoria. On any given Sunday, the church is filled with people from across the world. One mass flows into another in different languages, 5 languages in all, traditions and styles of prayer, yet all gathered around the same altar. And in the course of any single day, you move from one reality to another. You might meet a young family preparing for baptism, and then accompany a grieving family planning a funeral. But very quickly, you realize that is only the surface, because parish life is not only sacramental, as many of you well know. It is human, intensely human. You find yourself navigating personalities, expectations, and cultures that do not always understand one another. You are called to bring unity where there is tension, clarity where there is confusion, and sometimes peace where there is conflict. You sit in meetings that are less about theology and more about budgets, buildings, administrations, and decisions that affect thousands of lives. And there are moments, many moments, when you find yourself thinking, have I been taught that in the seminary? Or perhaps more honestly, was I paying attention when that was taught? Even years of academic study, service within the church's central structures, and exposure to her life at both national and international levels could not fully prepare me for the multifaceted and often surprising reality of parish ministry. And yet, dear friends, it was precisely there, in that complexity and unpredictability that I began to understand something more deeply, that the church is not something we manage, it is something we serve. And if I may add something personal, I found that almost unexpectedly, instead of fear and worry, God was giving me a certain joy. Because when you remain open to the ways God works, beyond your plans and expectations, your life in ministry is never reduced to routine. It remains alive. There is a sense not of constant ease, but of meaning, of movement, even of wonder. At least for me, it has meant that priesthood is never boring, because God is never predictable. That experience did not take me away from my vocation. It brought me into it more fully each day. And that is where you are now being sent, my dear friends, my dear graduates. God rarely works according to our carefully constructed expectations. Instead, He calls us into situations we did not choose, into encounters we did not anticipate. And yet, it is there that grace is more active. It is there that your theology becomes real. You graduate today, my dear friends, not simply with degrees, but with a deeper participation in the church's dialogue between faith and reason. At an institution like Holy Apostles College and Seminary, rooted in the Thomistic tradition, you have been formed in the conviction that faith and reason are not rivals, but companions. But the truth you have studied is not an abstraction. It has a face. And that face, my dear friends, is our Lord Jesus Christ. St. Thomas teaches us to seek the truth, but also reminds us that truth ultimately claims us and sends us. The world you're entering is not asking only for answers, it is asking for witnesses. There is, on the one hand, a renewed hunger for meaning, for transcendence, for God, especially among the young. And as you may have noticed, even in the wider culture and in national media, there are signs these days, quiet but unmistakable, of a renewed openness to faith, of people returning, searching again, asking deeper questions. And yet at the same time, we see confusion, fragmentation, and uncertainty about where truth can be found. Your task is not to resolve everything, dear graduates. Your task is something both simpler and more demanding: to be faithful, to love the people in front of you, to do each day the next thing that God asks of you. Dear graduates, you do not need to have everything figured out. And if you do, please see me afterwards, after this ceremony. I could use some advice. All you have to do is walk into the future with faith, with trust, and with fidelity. In Vietnamese, we have a beautiful hymn dedicated to the Blessed Virgin Mary. It's called Xin Vâng. Xin vâng, mẹ dạy con 2 tiếng xin vâng. Hôm qua, hôm nay và ngày mai, xin vâng. A yes to God. Yes, yesterday. Yes, today. And yes, tomorrow. All you have to do is to say yes and remain open to God's surprises. For you do not walk alone. Christ walks with you well into the future, my dear friends, with a lot of hope, with a lot of trust, and with a lot of fidelity. Thank you, and God bless you.